Okay, welcome back. I guess from the Dalek in the background, you can see this is going to be another talky how-to video rather than a music one. And hopefully this is another in the series of how to get extra voices on your Novation circuit tracks. This is one of those ones where I'm hoping it's going to be a shorter video because it's such a simple idea. It's one of those ones where when it eventually dawns on you, it's kind of face slap. Duh, why didn't I think of this sooner? And I have seen a couple of other videos about it since I thought of it myself. I think the nuances really of this is just kind of how to set it up to make it work. And the basic idea here is rather than wasting the polyphonic synth channels, that each of which can do 6 voices, rather than wasting those voices and just to having a track with a monophonic single like bass line or top line, you can actually then try and use all those voices by layering the sounds within the voice. It does take some planning because essentially you're going to record those layers in individually. It's a bit like making a cake. You kind of have to figure out all your ingredients beforehand. You stick them into the track, and really once they're mixed together, it's very difficult to kind of separate all the ingredients back out again. So a bit of forward planning, and I think also a little bit of thought as to how you can make each of the layers different. So I guess just to demonstrate it, I've done a simple pattern here. I've muted everything else, so all we're hearing at the moment is Synth 2, and I've got a pattern here just with an arpeggio going. Okay, so quite often if I'm doing this, I will do this so that I'll put the busiest pattern as the kind of the bottom layer to make this. And so if I show, literally I'm using every step, and it's a 32 step pattern. One of the important things if you're doing this to think about is that the 6 voice polyphony applies for any type of overlap of the notes. So if you've got a note with a long release portion of the note, you're going to use up your polyphony very quickly. And how you'll hear that is as you put the layers on. Some of the notes that you play won't actually sound, or some of the notes that you've already recorded will start disappearing, and they call this note stealing. So you do need to kind of be mindful of that. Now, one of the things is to try and make any of your notes as short as you can make them, so that there's no blurring between the different parts. And it is actually also quite useful to create a patch for whichever track you're doing this for that has a very short release time, and actually then use the gating of the note to change things. So I'll try and demonstrate this. So say for instance, I pick this note. You can hear it. It sounds very short. So what I've done is go into each of these actually, and you've probably noticed that when you alter the gate length, that's how long almost like the keys press down on the synth, that you can do whole steps for the gate length. But the other editing thing that you've got is as you tap it, the dimness changes, and there are 6 steps of gate length there. So what I've done for each of these is I've made the note shorter. still got one there that's too long. Okay. Now, I think when you've got a bass layer that you're happy with, you inevitably, as you add these layers, you're going to make a mistake, and it's quite hard to backtrack, edit out things you've done, because once you start editing, the layers are hard to separate. So what I'd suggest is going into patterns, and if you think you've kind of got a whole bunch of unused patterns here that you can use to store backup copies. So if you then duplicate into these, that can be your backup copy as you add extra layers. So again, that's very useful, and it means you can kind of go into recording step by step. So so essentially you then start there. Now what I've actually done is I've rather than you be exposed to my dodgy playing again, here's one that I've recorded earlier. So this is then with a chord sequence over the top of the arpeggio. So again, you can see it's only one voice that's playing there. We've actually got the arpeggio going, and we've got two note chords essentially playing over the top of that. Now what's distinguishing them is the difference between the very short arpeggio notes, which are in one octave. I've then shifted to the next octave down to give some separation really between the two layers that I've put in. And you know, if you then, you can hear that some of the notes, sorry, that's my dog going crazy in the background. Some of the notes have got the chord parts, some of them are still the original arpeggios. And if I go to the you can see that they're actually, the layers are separated really in terms of which octaves they're playing in. So I've probably even got room in there to squeeze in some bass notes. So, you know, I could then go, if I switch to a further pattern, here's one where I've actually recorded then a bass note on top of that. Okay, so do you get the idea? So we've actually got three layers there that are quite distinct. You can see that one of the problems now is that if I was to try and go and edit in those, it's getting quite hard to distinguish where the different notes are. Any overlap at all there, you're running into the note stealing, and because they're using the same patch, even though I've made the patch very velocity sensitive, so I'm using velocity to distinguish between them, I'm actually then on envelope 2 putting velocity sensitivity so that I can use that to kind of alter the timbre of them slightly. You can still see that they're quite similar sounds, even separated by octave. So there's a bit of crafty patch editing needs to go on. Anyway, as I say, hopefully you find this quite useful, and it can be just another way of stretching a little bit more out of the machine. Thank you, and I hope this is helpful to somebody. and see you next time. Bye.